What happens when a CEO decides to walk a day in the shoes of his employees? When he hides behind the facade of a regular customer and slips into the world of his own restaurant, where he's the man behind the curtain? It's easy to imagine that the world of fine dining, glittering chandeliers, and pristine service is as flawless as it seems on the surface. But as with many things in life, it's only when you dig a little deeper that the true nature of what's happening beneath the surface reveals itself. Let's dive into a story of a CEO, a hidden truth, and a second chance that could change everything. Bradley Montgomery wasn't just another business mogul. He was a self-made man, a man who'd risen through the ranks, leaving behind the world of struggle and uncertainty. His empire? A chain of fine dining restaurants that catered to the wealthy and powerful. Each restaurant gleamed with excellence, and Brad's reputation as a visionary preceded him everywhere. But here's the thing about success. It often distorts the lens through which people view the world. Brad had become so focused on numbers, quarterly reports, and expansion plans that he'd lost sight of the most important thing of all, the heart of his business, the people who worked there. They were more than just employees. They were the lifeblood of his restaurants. But he hadn't realized it. One evening, as Brad sat in his luxurious office overlooking the city, something gnawed at him. He wondered if his staff, especially his managers, were treating his employees as well as he imagined. Were they being treated like family, as he had always envisioned? Or had the pressure of maintaining the restaurant's reputation caused them to forget the basics: respect, kindness, fairness? The idea of going undercover struck him like a bolt of lightning. No one knew him as a customer. No one knew him as anything other than the CEO. And so he decided to visit one of his restaurants anonymously, blend in with the crowd, and see for himself what was really going on. The first restaurant he chose to visit was one of his oldest locations, Montgomery's Grille, known for its upscale atmosphere and top-notch service. It was a place where people came to celebrate anniversaries, birthdays, and major business deals. The restaurant was a symbol of success in the heart of the city, but that night, the warm glow of the chandeliers seemed a little less welcoming. Something felt off. As Brad walked through the door, the hostess greeted him with a polite smile, unaware of who he truly was. He nodded in return, walking past her as he scanned the dining room. Everything seemed normal on the surface: plates of perfectly arranged food, clinking glasses, and the murmur of polite conversation. He was led to a table near the kitchen, where he had a clear view of the operations unfolding in the back. From his seat, he could see the kitchen staff hustling to prepare meals, the waitstaff moving quickly through the aisles, and the manager, Franklin Hayes, seemingly overseeing it all. But something was different about Franklin. His movements were sharp, his eyes cold. He barked orders in a tone that wasn't just firm, it was demeaning. And then, Brad saw it. A veteran dishwasher, Raymond Ray Foster, hunched over the sink, scrubbing away at a pile of dirty dishes. Ray wasn't just any dishwasher. He was a man who'd served in the military for over 30 years. Now, in his retirement, he worked at Montgomery's Grille to keep busy, but the work was hard for him. His hands trembled slightly as he worked, and the weight of the years had slowed him down. But despite this, he still gave it his all. Brad watched as Franklin walked up to Ray, his face twisted in disdain. "You're slowing everyone down, Foster," Franklin said, his voice laced with irritation. "Get it together, or I'll have to cut your hours. You're not pulling your weight. The younger guys can do this job faster than you. I'll make sure you don't get overtime this week." Ray nodded quietly, his face flushed with embarrassment. He was used to the humiliation, but that didn't make it any easier. As the night wore on, Brad's stomach tightened with every passing moment. The manager, Franklin, was treating Ray like he was invisible, less than human. But the real shock came when Brad saw the list of shifts for the week. Franklin had given the prime evening shifts, the ones with the most tips, to his personal favorites. Not to the hardest workers, not to the ones who needed the hours. No, Franklin had played favorites, creating a divide among the employees. Brad's mind raced. He knew that every business had its flaws, but this... This was a breakdown in leadership, a failure to recognize the worth of every individual. He thought back to his own childhood, growing up in a struggling family where his parents taught him the value of hard work and respect. How could Franklin forget that? How could he treat his people this way? That's when Brad decided it was time to act. The evening drew to a close, and Brad saw Franklin making his rounds once more, barking at the waitstaff and ordering the kitchen staff around like they were his subordinates. Brad stood up from his table and for the first time that night walked into the kitchen. "Franklin," Brad said, his voice calm but firm, "I need to speak with you." Franklin turned, surprised to see the well-dressed man standing there. "Is there something wrong with your meal, sir?" Brad smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Not at all, but I think we need to talk about how you're treating your staff." Franklin's brow furrowed. "I'm the manager here. I'm running a tight ship. If you want a spot at this table, you need to understand that." Brad's tone softened. "I know what it means to run a business, but that doesn't mean we lose sight of the people who make it run. They're not just workers, Franklin. They're the heartbeat of this place." Franklin stood there, confused and irritated. But as Brad continued, his words seemed to pierce through the fog. "Ray Foster has been working here for years. He's a veteran. You humiliate him, Franklin, and I've been watching. You've been giving the best shifts to your favorites, not to the people who deserve them. People like Ray. Do you think he doesn't notice? Do you think the others don't?" The silence that followed was heavy, thick with realization. Franklin's face turned pale. His tough guy persona cracked in an instant. "Franklin," Brad said, his voice softer now, "you're a good manager, I know that. But leadership isn't about power, it's about respect. You've got a chance here to make things right. But if you don't, you're going to lose everything you've worked for." Franklin stood there, his hands shaking slightly. The truth had hit him harder than any reprimand could have. He had been too focused on being in control, on showing authority, that he'd forgotten what it meant to be a leader. And now the man who could fire him, the man who had built this empire, was giving him a second chance. Brad didn't fire Franklin that night. Instead, he gave him the one thing that meant more than anything, a second chance. "You've got the potential to be a great leader, Franklin," Brad said as he turned to leave. "But it's up to you to make it happen. Show me that you can be the kind of manager who respects every single person who walks through these doors." And with that, Brad left the restaurant, his heart heavy but hopeful. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. But sometimes a single moment of reflection, a single conversation could change everything. As for Franklin, the manager stood in the empty kitchen long after the last customer had left. He didn't sleep that night. Instead, he thought about what Brad had said, about the man he had become, and about the man he wanted to be. It wasn't going to be easy, but Franklin had learned an invaluable lesson that night. Leadership wasn't about wielding power. It was about lifting others up. And as for Ray Foster, he was given a second chance as well. Franklin made sure to adjust the shifts, ensuring that Ray had more hours, a fair schedule, and the respect he deserved. The next morning, the sun rose on Montgomery's Grille, and things were different. The air was lighter, the staff seemed more at ease, and the manager, well, he had learned that sometimes the greatest strength is found in humility. Sometimes it takes stepping outside your comfort zone and looking at things from a different perspective to truly understand what's important. Leadership, respect, and fairness aren't just buzzwords. They're the foundation of a successful business. And in the end, it's the people who make all the difference. That's the story, friends. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a pleasure sharing it with you all. Don't forget to comment below and let me know where you're watching from. It's always fun to see the global reach of these stories. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button for more amazing stories, tips, and tricks. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. If you'd like to show some extra love, tap the 3 dots near the share button and send a super thanks.